On behalf of the Department of English Language and Literature, Amrita School of Arts and Sciences, Kochi, I wholeheartedly welcome Dr. N. Sajan to his session on art and pandemic. Hearty welcome, sir.
Thank you, Dr. U. Krishna Kumar and Dr. Srina, Dr. Balakrishnan, Dr. Jairam, C.S. Jairam, and the other faculty members, and also all the esteemed students of Amrita Vishwavidya Peetham. Uh, I'm not going to talk much by way of introduction. Already the person, the research scholar who talked about art has already given us a brief introduction about the palliative, or rather the life sustaining quality of art, which is very, very important. So now, just before I get into my slide presentation, which will be just a series of paintings, series of drawings, series of charcoal drawings, sketches of various modes, even tribal folk art, all these things are there from India and also from abroad. I'll just request, what's your good name, please? Amrita. Oh, yeah, fine. You're also Amrita. I would request Amrita to just play the first slide. Just look at it, and then we'll get back to the slides after, say, 5 or maximum 8-10 minutes. So now, oh, I can see that here also. That's wonderful again. Yeah, I needn't turn my head off and on. First of all, um, let me tell all the students, esteemed students who are here, um, why we are talking in an English department, in a department of English, about art, pandemic, films, various other socio-economic issues at this time of the day. Sometime I think 10:30, 11 o'clock. There was a friend of mine doing his PhD. So there was another friend who was doing his MPhil or something, and then he asked me a question. See, we people do research in science, zoology, and biology, and various other branches of science, physical science. But what exactly are you English people up to? What is there so special about doing research in English? So, this is a big misconception among the people all over, I think, not the world, all over the state, maybe in many parts of our country. Because English departments no longer teach drama, English departments no longer teach poetry. English departments have become very, very interdisciplinary. So then I told him, after about this friend of mine who was asking me what you people are up to with PhD program in English. After 1 month, I went to the same department. So he was writing his dissertation, MPhil dissertation. So then he asked me, sir, you read the first passage of my MPhil dissertation. I read it. And then he asked me, sir, now please explain what you have understood. I said, by going through the first paragraph of your dissertation, this is the thing that I have understood. So then he told me in a in a disappointed tone, no, sir, I just intend the opposite of what you just explained. So he wanted to say something, but when he wrote, the idea went topsy turvy. So I told him, sir, this is what we are doing as part of our research in English. How to how to present your ideas, your thoughts, your cognitive the things on your cognitive domain in proper form in black and white. So there is a sort of hermeneutics working there. That's called hermeneutics in philosophy. So hermeneutics. So I told him epistemology. Or in Malayalam, you call it Jnana Shastram. So the same thing happens here also. Why we talk about art in the time of pandemic? maybe 20 years ago or maybe 25 years ago, this must have been a very strange thing. Talking about pandemic, talking about socio-economic issues in an English department. So today, this is a very big change that has taken place. Interdisciplinarity. Everything is interdisciplinary. Um, when we talk about even computer science, which is the subject of your a respected director, sir. So we no longer talk about computer science, pure computer science. We talk about uh, biosciences and biotechnology, where we have the link between or the interface between technology and the biological science. Similarly, we talk in English departments about films, about art, about visual communication. Of course, Dr. C.S. Jairam is there. Um, in fact, these are things which have become part of our curriculum these days. No English curriculum will be complete, will ever be complete without a proper understanding of all the other surrounding socio-economic or even cultural issues. Um, so now slowly I'm getting into my topic. This is, of course, this is a digitally modified kind of picture there, which is just a sort of flag hoisting kind of thing of for my presentation. I think Dr. Srina, I can take about 45 minutes. Yeah, I can I can take time till 11:30 or yeah. So I'll talk for 45 minutes and then stop. So then you can share your ideas. I'm, in fact, a bit shy to talk in front of Dr. C.S. Jairam. He is actually a person who has inspired me in so many ways by delivering so many lectures in our college at Kannur about art and the interface between art, literature, and social sciences. Um, Maybe Dr. Jairam also will share his perceptions. So now when we talk about art in the time of pandemic, we have to carry our ideas to the 14th and 15th centuries, because in the 14th century only we had the thing called the phenomenon called Black Death, the phenomenon called Black Death in Europe. And then after Black Death, this is the trajectory. Of course, I will never be talking about on my slides. You will never have this trajectory, because then that will take about 2 to 3 hours time to talk about the whole thing. The trajectory of art in the time of pandemic. So that's why I said I entitled my presentation as Art in the Time of COVID-19, which covers only uh, the span of 2 years, 2020 to 2022, so to speak. So there are so many centuries. So maybe when we anchor our thinking, our points, our ideas about art in the time of pandemic, not art in the time of COVID, we'll have to go back to the 14th century when the Black Death happened in Europe, and it was a huge sort of catastrophic experience to the people of the West. So many people died, so many people perished when medical care was not so much uh, developed the way it is here now. So now I'll be referring to Black Death off and on when I talk about the pictures here. So the Black Death was a sort of a cataclysmic, a game-changing kind of experience when people wanted to express their agony, and anxiety and what you call desperation, a strange sort of desperation which was catching up throughout Europe. They used the platform not of the not of printed literature, but of art. So mind you, that was the 14th century was not the period when canonical Renaissance art was born. Canonical Renaissance art was born. See, those of you who read Western literature, I needn't come all the way down from Kannur and tell you that those of us or those of you who read Western literature have to begin your talk from Renaissance paintings. You know that better than me. Renaissance paintings, because the Renaissance painters are the people who liberated art from the clutches of very rigid kind of religiosity. They humanized it, they tempered it with humanism. So that tempering of art with humanistic perspective or perception begins with the Black Death. So that is why I call this Black Death, or I consider in my presentation, in my deliberation, or in my meditation rather, on art in the time of COVID as a starting point. So from there, I'm not going to talk much about Black Death because there are about 58 slides are there, which I have to talk about, not in detail, but I'll take you on a long journey in the coming 40 minutes. So Black Death, and from Black Death, we come to Renaissance. So by the time the Black Death had ravaged the socio political or the polities across Europe, the whole of Europe went into penury, into bankruptcy. And the people did not have enough money because art requires support. Art requires patronage. Art requires what you call in Malayalam chitra stali, a platform or what you call the surface of the plane to project for the artists. So that was not there in the form of churches. So the churches, after about 150 years, become a little more rich with patronage from believers, with patronage from the kings who were supporting the artists. They built up huge churches, and the churches became like the temples in India, which became the platform not for art, but for sculptures, because the best known sculptures are there in India, in South India especially. I needn't tell about all that. But similarly, in Europe, the churches became platforms of what they provided. The ceilings of the churches became a sort of huge platform for the artists to do their paintings. So from there, from Black Death, we go into, we go to the coming ages, and then there is the French Revolution. And from the French Revolution, when we come to the 20th century, I'm making a quantum jump from 14th century to the 20th century. So during this period, I don't say after Black Death, all the ages, all the centuries were free from pandemic. After Black Death, the next big, huge malady was the plague, bubonic plague. Bubonic plague, and after bubonic plague of the 17th century, the 16th, and many of you who do Shakespeare, in Shakespeare, the worst curse that you can throw upon or you can cast upon a person, plague on you, plague on you. So after plague, we have the French Revolution, and then after that, we have the modernization, industrial revolution, and then comes in the early 20th century, 1914, 1915, 13, 14, 15. This is the period when there was the Spanish flu, exactly 100 years ago from the point where from the temporal point where we are standing now. So this is the point where we have to talk today about art and literature. So 100 years have gone by after Spanish flu created its catastrophe in Europe. So when such a catastrophe hits the societies, so many things do happen. And this is the period, especially the last 2 years, we have witnessed a period when so many fluctuations in our thinking, in our perception, in our conceptualization about human life, theorization about art and literature, all these things got changed. But it is here that when we talk today about COVID, when we play this as a kind of what you say inaugural opening slide, what we have there is the huge spread of small particles using digital technology and using the technology of painting. There is the presentation of the what you call the virus, what you call the COVID-19 virus spreading throughout the phase of humanity. So there it is metonymically, it is not one single phase, FACE, it is a whole PHASE. A phase of humanity is represented here through that particular art. So now can we move forward? Shall we move forward once again? Yeah, thank you. So now in the first few slides, I will talk about, I have categorized my presentation to focus upon the various uh, ways in which artists have rendered the reality, the reality of COVID-19. So here is a folk art, which is by an Indian artist, Ambika Devi. So in the folk art, can we have it full screen, please? So is there a possibility for a full screen? Otherwise, leave it. Don't worry. Let it be there. I can. It is Ambika Devi, who is an Indian artist, and you look at that. It is typical North Indian folk art, the designs of which you find on textiles and handicrafts. So we begin our presentation by focusing upon the ordinary artisans who had to build up a fight, who had to engage themselves with COVID-19. And in this, we have the participation of women and children. So throughout the folk art representations, we have the representation of women and children. Of course, the women and children are the people who have been faced with the reality of COVID-19 in so many ways. So we'll talk about that. So there is what is called the folk art of Pada Chitra, Patachitra, which is part of this kind of scroll art, something like a calendar. So we will begin our discussion about the way in which the artisans, the ordinary artisans, showing their were representing their trials and tribulations during the period of COVID-19. So look at that picture. I think if I talk about that picture if I spend about 5 minutes about for every picture, it will take quite a long time. But you just enjoy the kind of uh, or just try to perceive the kind of a color combination. Of course, the color combination is very folk in its nature, but you have the red color and the black color, the prominence given to red color and the black color. And when you look at the whole frame, the attention is captured by the fish-like structure or the fish-like pattern of the mask. So there is art gets masked. There is a complete involvement of the people, the ordinary people, in day-to-day reality of getting water, but even the elemental things in life have to be performed, or even the basic things have to be performed with a mask. Shall we go to the next one? Of course, we have Apindra Swain, which is again uh, another. This is something very strange. We have on the one side the goddess. It could be Parvati, it could be any kind of goddess. And the goddess, even to the gods, we have fear. There is a fear of the pandemic, and there is no communication between the human being and the goddess, the woman and the goddess, because even there is a complete alienation. So look at the distance there. So one major fallout of COVID, as all of you know, was the fear of the mutual fear of touch, the touch which meant so many things, because Renaissance humanism brought about a complete paradigm shift with regard to touch, and that touch completely got disconnected with the COVID-19, uh, with the onset or the onslaught of COVID-19. Even there is fear of the goddess there, and this fear persists even in spiritual life. Or there is a sort of suspicion even about the godly selves of people. So on the one side we have the godly self, and the other side we have the human self, the spiritual self and the human self. So many ways you can use your own way to describe this representation, because everybody there is a spiritual self and there is a material self. So that completely got snapped in the time of COVID. Shall we go forward? Thank you. So again, the same artist there. It is again the Pata Chitra, Patachhi. Again, another form of folk art, which is just like a calendar art for the tribals. We have the interiors, the homesteads being intruded into by COVID. And look at the way she is preening before she is looking into the mirror, her own self, which is distance from her own essence. We have the washing, the motif of washing. So always this motif of hand washing was there symbolically in Macbeth. Lady Macbeth keeps on. If you have read, those of you who have read Lady Macbeth, Shakespeare's play Macbeth, will know that Lady Macbeth keeps on washing her hands in the dead of night, and she finds that she can never ever clean her hands. So it's symbolically here we have the washing of hands, continuous washing of hands, to keep not only the body but to keep the lives, to keep their colors clean, but still there is a sort of loneliness that pervades all around. So I'm not talking about the chroma psychology or the colors. Shall we go to the next one? Family life. How has family life or nuptial life been affected? So this is a folk rendering of the married life. I think there was the doctors went on to say that even in conjugal life, you have to wear mask. When the husband goes to a wife or the wife goes to a husband, mask is a necessity. So even the family life is ridden with, or is riddled with, this kind of distancing which has been there even in the Indian family. So this is a sort of painting which is a little bit bizarre as far as the Indians are concerned, as I told you, because in a wedding, traditionally, in almost all the weddings, the male figure will go to a female figure and clasp each other's hands. But here, it is not the clasping of the hands, but it is the sharing of the flower by keeping a distance. And in the middle, there is the inviolable reality of the COVID, who is the character. So who is the presiding? The presiding priest is COVID, and there are two crows, which can be very very symbolic there. So shall we go forward? So such paintings are there plenty. This particular painting is again, which will talk about Krishna, and there is a sage like figure right in front of Krishna. We'll talk about that later. I'm repeating that later. And there is again from the Rajasthani folk painting done by Kalyan Joshi. Next one. Yeah, thank you. So there also you have all the colors. So what actually we can go on endlessly talking about all these things. The folk artisans, how they were affected. I'm not focusing upon the way the folk artisans made a sort of collective venture. Many of them were in a sort of desperation in Calcutta. So many communities were there. In Rajasthan, in Bihar, the communities that were using art as their livelihood found it very difficult to stand up to the times. So they got themselves assimilated to a new kind of what you say ethos or a new kind of ecology, that is what you call the viral ecology of art. So when we talk about all these new artistic renderings, we call it viral modernism. There is a book like that, viral modernism, or the viral ecology of art, or what you call the viral aesthetics. Maybe that is another way to talk about all these forms of art. Shall we go forward? We'll uh, we will hike the pace. Again, Lalita Datta, which is again Mithila folk art. So in all these folk art forms, one thing which is very interesting is the way the women artists, most of them are women artisans, how the women artists, they engaged themselves with the reality of COVID by maintaining not only distance, by maintaining a sort of energy within themselves for resilience. So in all these maybe it's a bit far removed. You look at the circle there, the pandemic there, the spiked circle which represents the pandemic, the public life which is there, the colorful life which is there. All these were giving the artists a sort of what you say, a sort of relief, a sort of rejuvenation when they represented these things in the form of art. They thought that, or they created a sort of similitude that they were still in the midst of life. They were still doing their making their contribution to society. Shall we move forward? This is a very short, this is a very slender kind of I'm sorry because it cannot be enlarged. So I will only draw your attention to the topmost figure, which of course is technically covered up. We have the huge dragon-like mouth of the disease, the virus that is that has actually conquered all the walks of life of the artisan. So shall we go? This is again the Chitra Chitrakar. I think it is Chitrakar scroll art. It's just in the form of this has been used in text by the textile industry for making fabrics. You may find it in on churidars and other modes which are there. Maybe today we have only just crossed 2 years. After 10 or 20 years, these things will be becoming a part of our discussion as viral modernism. How viral modernism has affected the psyche, the cognitive uh, base of or the cognitive domain of the artist. Shall we go for? Yeah, thank you. We'll go to the next piece. Mithila. Again, one thing which I will be focusing upon in the course of my presentation is the way the laborers. Here we have the women laborers. This is a kind of tribute. Just the earlier one. Next one. Yeah, this one. Thank you. Uh, we have the Mithila art, which talks about labor, which pays a sort of tribute to the women's labor. I don't know how many of you have noticed that there was a huge incidence, a very disturbing proportion of incidents of domestic violence. So many cases were left unreported. There were there was this huge silence from the domestic front. So many people had to go in for divorce and separation. So there was the UN Secretary General talking once. I still remember there were television bites, video clippings of the UN Secretary General talking about the need for domestic harmony, domestic peace. So the women who always stay as a bedrock of resilience had painted all these figures by paying tribute to their own labors, which did not go recorded in very many places. Now, in between, let me tell you one thing. I think there are two or three, yeah, yeah, there are two more. You just look at the two more. Next one, please. The colorful rendering of COVID, the presence, the inviolable presence of the sun, which gives, there is a goddess, the hand of the um, very dangerous Kali like figure of COVID there in the middle, and then the women, how they face their loneliness, all these are mentioned. I'm not talking in detail, I'm not going into the minute aspects of all these things. And one more picture is there, and then we will. Next one, yeah. This is by again a Rajasthani folk art, where which is again sort of miniature, where there is a sage, and in the middle, he when he is praying, when he's singing bhajans in praise of Krishna, there is the presence of the, what do you call, sanitizer. So even the spirit, the spirit of, because Krishna, as all of us know, is a big romantic hero in the minds of the Indian people. And the Krishna, who has been responsible for all great feats in Mahabharata or in like things like Kaliya Mardanam, even Krishna's power was, I mean, because Krishna is, I'm not talking about religion or anything, but I'm talking about the Indian metaphors. Because we live with collective metaphors in our collective unconscious. So all these metaphors got reformulated during the period of, especially the, most of these are women oriented paintings, but done by women artisans. All these paintings grew, what you call, got reconfigured during the period of COVID-19. So now we go to the next one, the next category, that is loneliness. I'll talk about loneliness. I'll be going a bit far. Shall we go to the next one? We go from here not to the folk art. This is not Indian. These are all paintings from places like Canada, US, and even Southeast Asian countries. So we have the young people, the people of your generation who had to who had to make meaning out of loneliness. This is one painting which actually arouses a lot of thoughts about the whole concept of being at home. In English, there is the phrase, be at home, make yourself at home. You be at home. So they, until 2020, we all thought remaining home was a very pleasant experience. No, every school child or even a university student like you people, when you get this order or when you get this blank permission, all of you go home. We are all happy. We beam with smiles. We all remember when we were in unpleasant tuition school classrooms, when the teacher finally says, all work is over, all of you can go home. It's a very pleasant kind of declaration. It's a very pleasant kind of ordainment. But that sense is completely upturned by the concept of home. And here, being at home is a very unpleasant experience. And look at this lady holding on to the dry branches. What do those dry branches metaphorically or symbolically represent? Adversity, toil, being alone. resilience. So being alone gives people resilience. Being in adverse circumstances. Poetry is so much of poetry has been written about aloneness, not about loneliness. Romanticizing loneliness is what happens in romantic poetry, even in Indian poetry. We have Shakuntala's aloneness in the presence of a Torimar. But this is not that kind of aloneness, or this is not that kind of solitariness, but the solitude becomes a sort of adverse circumstance which gives. So, but at the same time, this is a painting which gives us, on a face, you have a sort of nirvriti, like what do you call expression, a feeling of blissfulness, which shows that you are within yourself. Shall we go forward, please? Similarly, there is Dhruvi who does this painting. There is the moonlight, there are the flowers, loneliness, which can be convert your loneliness into pleasurable experience. Now, it's very easy to say that because all of you know you wanted to get run out of your houses, and so many people didn't have the thing called at least um, the people of Kerala to a very great extent were unique because most of the Keralites do have a home, at least a similitude of a home, if at all it is not a rich home. But there were so many Indians who did not have a thing called home. We have Bombay, incidents from Bombay, incidents from Delhi, incidents from Chennai. You can connect all these things to that. So here, you instead of the lotus on the floor, you have the round, 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 round. You go to a bank, you go to a public place, you go to a road, you have distancing. So the metaphor for distancing is what is there in the form of carpet. It is not the carpet of reception. It is not the red carpet of reception. It is the red carpet of social distancing. And shall we go forward? Again, this is a uh, this is a this is a Canadian lady, I think from a university in Canada. You have the brain, the interior of the brain, introspective about one's own self, the lonely self. Outside, there is the world of colors, but inside, it is completely dark, written with so many voices and noises that talk about. If you look at that, you will find gray matter, white matter, stare, eyes, color, and so many letters are there. A sort of print reality embossed in the mind of the self is there. Maybe it is sort of abstract art. Shall we go to the next one? Again, loneliness is pictured there. Another in another way. So all these artists envisioned loneliness using different images, different techniques. These are not folk art, mind you, as all of you know. Another point which I wanted to highlight is that it is not the ordinary people alone. It is here the educated people. So art, when we talk about viral modernism in India during the last 22 years, 2.5 years, art got democratized from a small elite community of artists, trained artists. Art went down to the ordinary people, the people working and operating in various segments of life. So here in this, again, look at the way how the mouths do open, the red ruby lips do open up. The red ruby lips are diabolic lips of COVID that are ready to swallow you up. So again, it is a woman's loneliness, the woman's world in bubbles. You can talk at length about all those things and think of that. And next is a very interesting romantic picture, but it is no more romantic. I told you how the greatest number of poems have been written about loneliness, about solitariness, about dreaming in lonely atmosphere. We have the traditional scene of a woman enjoying her independence in her bath. You can call it Tamarakulam, or you can call it Kalipoiga, or whatever it is. But there, life is not the same. Nature has been completely disturbed. It is a disturbed nature, but there is a sort of positivity. In most of these paintings, not all these paintings, in most of these paintings, there is a positivity of a bird. Many of the COVID paintings had the prominent presence of natural life. So natural life going from anthropomorph to anthropocene, giving importance to nature, not to man, not to the human, not to man means man, woman, not to the human form, but to the forms in nature. So we have the leaves there, the dry leaves which are flowing. In the front, you have the leaves that are flowing away from her, but then the bird carries. So there is a sort of positivity there. Again, the sleep. Look at even the sleep, which is so beautifully described in so many songs in India, in so many poems in India. Sleep has been described by Shakespeare again in Macbeth so beautifully. But even that sleep is not a comfortable sleep because it is like this. And now we come to uh, there is another very colorful painting done with digital support. Next one, please. Next one. Yeah. This is one painting done by a very young person, Leia Kashyap, Ritika Leia Kashyap. The same thing which I told you. You know, people were staying inside their rooms, studying, reading, and they have nothing to share. Nobody to share their experiences, but looking into themselves in the mirror, looking into their own, the absent presence of their companions through their own images. So you can talk about this picture in terms of the digital support which was there, digital sustenance which was there in the form of selfie, in the form of your cell phones, which gave you so many experiences. So shall we go? I'm being very brief. This is a kind of cartoon. uh, for some people, people who were heckled by the busy life, a lonely life gave them a sort of peace, but it was a peace without any creativity. Uh, Next one is again a kind of sketchy cartoon by Gagan Singh. I have a flat. You have a flat. I think that you people are all, many of you will be from Kochi. Many of you must have had this is a sort of minimalist kind of sketching. People looking out in search of the openness, but there is nothing. So the world outside is completely empty. Again, the world of the digital reality. Next one. So you just see the psychedelic picture which is there on the computer screen. Many of the students who left their hostels went back home, might be the science students, especially. For them, moving in the city, walking in the city, the experience of walking in a city, of course, there is an essay like that, walking in the city, was there only through the digital reality, which gave them only a sort of, that's by Michel Sertiu, and it was a sort of rejuvenating experience. But even this rejuvenating experience was a sort of similitude, a simulacrum kind of thing which was there. See, this is one thing which I wanted, or which I'll just take a sip of water. I have hot water. No, don't worry, no, no, I have water here. Don't worry. You just look at this. Next one, please. This is something very strange. This happened in a university in Toronto. We have private spaces. The people, the university students, I mean, all these are pictures about university students, the young people. The university students abroad, studying abroad, staying away from their homes, they missed their friends, the touch of their friends, the cuddling, the fondling, the embraces, because it is a Western university. So what did they do when they faced stress? They went to this booth, and you have the partially inflated gloves there, just like a simulated human body. So you just hold the body, just rub your own body by using that private space and feel that you are enjoying the companionship, the physical proximity, the embrace of your companion. So that is why it is called, it is photographic realism done by Jenny, who's a student at Toronto. I think decompress the very uh, we had stress busting. Stress is a very popular word now. Stress busting techniques, but it is not stress busting. It is decompression, avoiding the compression in your mind, in your body. So look at that. Shall we go forward? Another. Here is a painting of a kiss of a male female, or a male male, or a could be even a female female, partners coming together. But what is the kind of huge topography, or the ecology that gets activated in their mind, which they do miss very badly? So the proximity, the human touch, which was lost, was a very big loss for the people. There's of course, the painting is called the celebration of proximity, because with such a lot of watercolors and things like that. Shall we go forward? The next one, we have a sort of very kind of mellowed kind of painting there. And we'll go to the next one. The middle-aged people. It's a very popular artist, Marcelo Fernandez, talking about living in the city, living um, in the apartment. We have the colors, the use of colors, which are very, very morose. Shall we go to the next one? Yeah, this is again part of the life of the youth. You have a modern youth. It's a girl, or it could even, yeah, it could, look at her wearing, that is the type of watch. What do you call that watch? Eh? Smartwatch, exactly. I forgot. Thank you. Smartwatch. And with all the smartwatch, there is nothing happening. You have to be put up with the state of loneliness, and yoga becomes a sort of uh, experience that could rejuvenate you. Shall we go to the next one? This is another yogic posture, which I found in all among all the slides. This is a slide. This is the painting I like the most by Amira Mandova, because it can be commented upon symbolically, something that shows the representation of the human valva, yoni, stri yoni, nrittam, and so many things are there. Meditating, learning, listening, all these are there. Letters are there, the colors are there. Tribal, what do you call? There is a community in Aboriginal. We have the influence of Aboriginal art. Shall we go to? Yeah, there is. Next one is a very painful kind of uh, picturization of loneliness by a lady from Kuwait. Look at that. Broken mirrors. I mean, there is a, what do you call, the net there. the self getting completely fragmented. Now we have the life of the youth. We'll go very fast. I think I've already taken about 45 minutes. I'll have to stop within 5, 6 minutes. The life of the youth. I needn't explain this because you might have been like this, looking into the clock, looking at the pictures, looking at the objects in your house. Maybe you got very close to the objects in your house, the church, the chairs, the table, the objects. The objects sort of had a sort of life in the house. Next one also is a sort of decompression happening there. We have the next one, please. Next one. Yeah. There is the embrace which was missed by the people, youngsters especially, even maybe the married people might not have had this kind of a sort of what you say uh, lack which was there. Next one, please. This is a very nice painting, Madeline Rotella. You have the passion and sexuality which is there, which is done through, because the colors didn't come well on the slide. The colors are very, very robust here, which do when it is watched on a smaller screen. Shall we go forward? Yeah, this is something which all of you might have experienced: the sleep, the blanket, the cot. But at the same time, sleep is not negatively pictured here. Sleep is a kind of occasion which might have made you very creative. All your lectures, online lectures, you must have listened from your bed, switching on your mobile phone, even from my home. I have seen children, student, not children, students. So that's why in schools, in schools, you remember the children were asked to wear uniform and sit in front of the computer or cell phone, because they had as they were given, they were sort of put in a sort of simulator that they were going to school, because when you change your clothes you feel that you are in your student self like that. But that not in the case of university students, college students. You see there is another abstract, next one, abstraction of what happens in the underwater world, the distancing, all the macabre kind of feelings do come there. And another thing which was set back during the time of COVID was the race, just like the racial discrimination, there was a discrimination. So this is one painting which shows that fight COVID, don't fight against the human beings. China was looked down upon with a stigma. Many Asian countries, many communities were looked down upon with a sort of stigma. So that was a very big, just the way AIDS, I didn't talk about AIDS. During AIDS, this happened. The largest, because during the time of AIDS, in many countries of the West, especially in America, there was a huge uprising on the one side against open sex, and on the other side against in favor of what you say all kinds of sexuality, even homosexual relationships, lesbian relationships, gay relationships, all these things you do study. So AIDS was a sort of what you say uh, cauldron, a sort of big point juncture. Likewise, in the case of discrimination, also this was a big juncture. Shall we go forward? Caring, humanism had next one, please. Humanism, human uh, images were there abundantly across the streets. Street art was very popular, not the canonical platforms like the churches and the art galleries. Art went out to the roads. Shall we um, move to the? I'll just show you some of the posters. Next, yeah. Wash your hands and open your heart. There is this. Yeah, next one, please. There is a touch. Touch is something which begins from Michelangelo's uh, painting. And then shall we go forward? Here there is the discrimination. This is a cartoon. When there are two people going to the friend's house, one is wearing a, what do you call that? COVID suit. What is it called? Eh? PP, yeah. PPE kit. So that is there, and then the friend in yellow color says, "No, no, we are going there for an anti-discrimination protest. So don't wear the PPE kit." So laborers, I needn't tell you about Swiggy, Zomato, all those people made the life a little more relaxed. The farm workers. Next one. Swiggy people, then next farm workers, then a lot of posters came saluting the health workers. So many health workers there. All these are health. Shall we go forward? Health workers testing COVID, doctors. That one is a very interesting painting. There is a doctor typing a message to his daughter, because we thought that the doctors were superhuman people. No, of course there is a doctor here. Dr. Milind is there. Milind is it's a doctor typing a message to his daughter, and that the daughter is asking father, "Father, why are you not coming home?" Then the father is typing a message. It is not there. This is the description of the message. "I am giving you all life. So that is why, in order to give you all life, I am staying in the hospital." So the separation between the father and the daughter. So many photos were there in the newspapers. So yeah, we have Carolyn Olson, who is a teacher. Carolyn Olson is a teacher, I think in Canada. She has done a lot of paintings based on her experiences. Next one. This is again an Indian painter, Dwarika Prasad. Kawad art, saluting the people, the doctors, the health workers, the ASHA workers. I think the wonderful, because COVID had to be fought not by the doctors alone, but by all the people working on the grass at the grassroots level. Shall we go forward? Yeah, all these things are there. And the care. Shall we go forward? Yeah, this is another painting which you can carry home, because the food, all these people, home, education, mental stability. You have the smiley there. All these, then the food, which is there in the form of a kind of bread. All these are very, very important to life. And stay home and garden. That's a very beautiful poster. Next one. Stay home and garden by an American um, poster artist, poster maker. Stay home and garden. It's a kind of multi-valent phrase. Stay home and garden. And we have the appeal posters. Next one. Appeal posters, not many. We have the women and children. Next one. The women and children were sort of served as a bedrock of support. And this is the next one. Next one is the symbolic by representation by Eileen Maya Smith, photo embroidery, how the embroidery materials do become a sort of fetish for the women, especially because they had, just like the decompression there we saw in the lives of the college university youth, the women artists, the women who were there at home. I think the people of Kerala, they did a lot of cooking, men as well as women. They entered the kitchen. I think we come to the last part. There is a little child, the little children. A lot of things could be said about little children. The children, it's very sad because nobody will talk about. Maybe after 10 years, there will be writings about the trauma of children during the last 2.5 years. The children were given so many, one activity one day, because such a lot of luxury food they were fed into their bellies. They must have had a bad time. So there is this another very beautiful painting where we have a child with a companion dogs. The pet industry prospered during the COVID times because the children wanted to dogs, especially people living on the flats. വീട്ടിൽ പറമ്പൊന്നും ഇല്ലാത്ത ആളുകൾ ഫ്ലാറ്റിൽ ജീവിക്കുമ്പോൾ ഒരു വല്ലാത്ത ഏകാന്തത ഉണ്ടായിട്ടുണ്ടാവും. Maybe that was then we thought ഒരു 5 സെന്റ് സ്ഥലം ഉണ്ടെങ്കിൽ that would have been a luxury. Nature, last 2-3 paintings, you have nature there. The whole screen of nature gets unfolded or unraveled in a new way. Thinking about nature changes. Next one. Thinking about nature, rejuvenative power of nature. Live in tune with nature. Message. And then the kaleidoscope of multiculturalism. Next one. Kaleidoscope. Bonding, irrespective of caste, community, and identity. Let the people bond together. Thank you very much. Suppose I didn't bore you for, I think it took near about 1 hour. Dr. Sreena is here. Shall we take 5-10 minutes to talk? Yeah, I think you can share. You needn't be questions. You can share your own perceptions, your own experiences, just because this is an open forum after COVID. Thank you very much. I think I'm coming to Kochi for a live presentation after 2 years. My last presentation was done on women's paintings at CUSAT on the Women's Day, 8th of March at CUSAT Women's Studies Center. Thank you very much, English Department. Thank you very much, Balashan sir and your team, Jairam sir, and all your faculty members and the wonderful student listeners and research scholars. Thank you.
So I'm so happy to see you, Dr. Sajan, after so long a time. As you said, I remember the good old days we were together to discuss art, literature, and all these things. I'm so happy you're still keeping it alive and sharing your excitement to our students. And for me personally, you have done brilliantly well, covering almost all the aspects of artistic representations, all walks of life you have touched. And then as a student of practicing art, I and my friends confronted a big problem during COVID times. When the lockdown started, we were all very enthusiastic, hoping that we would get much time to sit down and paint. But within 1 month, most of my friends, their materials were exhausted. There were no drawing papers. There were no crayons. There were no colors. And most of the color shops were closed. Now, I can personally feel the desperation of practicing artists. Not only selling these paintings, but they were not able even to paint. That kind of trauma for practicing artists was also there. And regarding the folk artists, Madhubani, Midhila means Madhubani women, and then Patchitra he showed. They had a kind of resilience to react to any kind of emergency. I remember we had a workshop. We had a 1 month long workshop of folk artists of Madhubani and Patchitra and Kalagar communities came here. And one lady, quite uneducated from village background, she was creating a Patchitra. She was painting a scroll. And Patchitra, the fun is, they will paint a scroll and they will construct a narrative also. They will sing about it. And amazingly, what we saw was she was painting the assassination of Rajiv Gandhi. Now, we never thought. She was painting the assassination of Rajiv Gandhi, and she was on the spot, she was constructing a narrative. She was singing about it. And maybe that was one way these women could confront these harsher realities by transmuting the sufferings into art. I'm so happy that you focused on these folk artists. And one thing between Western folk artists, for example, black artists and our own folk artists, I got a chance to talk to some black painters from America, and I told them, when we teach American visual artistry, we don't have many blacks. We don't have, excepting a painter like Sam Gillian, we don't have blacks at all in visual art. Whereas for music, sports, there is no American music, there is no American sports without the blacks. I said, what happened? Then what he said was, sir, for painting, we need leisure. We had never any leisure in our life. Right from the days of plantation, we had never leisure. We had to sit down, and painting was a leisure time activity. And American blacks had never had a leisure, whereas we could sing in captivity, in prison, in working in the farms, plantations. We used to sing to disunburden our soul. So music developed. And I think in COVID times, along with painting, so many musicians were connecting online, and they were actually trying to form a kind of camaraderie. In the case of painting, I don't think it was successful, because I myself was part of an international painting exhibition called Logame Taravadu. And when Alapura, it was a mini Binale. When Bose planned it, we said, no, boss, it'd be suicidal. It's lockdown. It was so hopeful. He said, lockdown will be immediately shifted. And remember, for 3 months, all the 7 or 8 galleries remained spectatorless. And he was so frustrated. We could anticipate that. He was so frustrated. Nobody could come, and though all the exhibitions were put up. So that was a kind of disappointment and frustration that artists faced. But despite that, thanks to our digital media and all, artists could do some work. And only now it's emerging, as Sajan has said, has studied. Only now people are looking back to what we were doing for these 2 years. And personally, I feel the trauma is so proximate and so immediate that we may need some passage of time to reflect on it to come out. Maybe 10 years after, very significant artworks on this traumatic experience will come out. Because in the immediate wake of that tragic experience, many artists couldn't imagine, for example, 2 or 3 members of my family are in quarantine, or they are infected with COVID, they are in the hospitals and all. Even if I'm an artist, I will not be in a mindset at all. I will not be in a mindset to sit down and paint. Maybe I will think that it is sacrilegious to do that. In the immediacy of that experience, many artists felt guilty actually. Some artists have told me, we feel guilty on speaking about art and painting in the immediate uh, vicinity of that uh, disaster actually. So this kind of thing is there, but despite that, these artists were doing that. And mostly, another thing that can come out in future is, most of these artists have been relying on media images for their artwork. Am I right, Sajan? They were influenced by media representations of COVID. Whereas most of these artists, as most of us, may have immediate, different, tragic narratives. Narratives of loneliness, narratives of sadness, and we may find different metaphors, different images to articulate that. I will wind up with one instance of a great disaster of that Hiroshima bombing. And one film director, Alan Rene, was commissioned to do a documentary on Hiroshima bombing. And he said, I will not do a documentary, but I will make a film. And he made a film on Hiroshima bombing, and it is titled Hiroshima Mon Amour. Hiroshima, I love you. Nothing of nuclear bombs, nothing of war there. It's a love story of an American lady and a Japanese young man. Just that. You watch Hiroshima Mon Amour by Alan Rene, it's a love story. Then how did he justify his commission? He said, he's seen that movie. There is a man, a Japanese man, and an American girl, they fall in love. But every day when they are together, the American lady is having that guilty feeling in mind, the white man's burden, that we were actually responsible for your misery. The Japanese man, maybe while loving the American woman or girl, he has in his mind the feeling that, after all, you ruined our life. Like, they never say that, they never articulate, but in the subconscious, these things are operating. Maybe in future, maybe 5 years or 10 years later, artists may look back to these miserable, sad times, and they will tease out these very, very touching private narratives. And we can only wait for that. And I thank Sajan for inaugurating, that kind of opening by speaking on COVID art. Thank you, Sajan. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. C.S. Jairam, for that intervention. Um, just, sir, you reminded me about the Logame Taravadu. In Logame Taravadu, there was an installation. I didn't talk about installation. Maybe at the next Kochi Binale, which might happen next year, not this year. This is 2022. 2023, if at all there is Kochi Binale, please go. Let us all go there. So, because installation art, it creates an altogether different kind of experience. At Alapura Binale, it's not Binale, Logame Taravadu, there was a rail, small kind of installation, a combination of painting and installation. Rail എന്ന് പറയുന്ന this emblem of rail, as far as the Indians are concerned, it is the largest railway establishment in Asia. It is the largest possibility for mobility. But the rail became a sort of emblem, symbol of migration, mass migration, and also depth. So many people walked along the rail to their hometowns, and so many got killed, run over by the trains, especially the goods trains. So the rail becomes a sort of changed, an emblem, a sort of symbol with a changed perception. I'm reminded of that. Alapura Binale. Thank you. I didn't show that. I had a small, but I didn't bring it into my slide. Thank you for that. I'll next time when I go and talk about this topic somewhere else, I'll add that emblem also. Thank you. If you similarly, if you want to have to anything to share, you can share. I will add to my presentation when I go. If at all I get a chance to write an article also, I'll do that. Thank you.
Hello, sir. My name is Vinod Lakshman. I belong to the visual media department, a practicing artist, and yeah, I finished my studies from fine arts colleges. Sir, one point I would like to add, since you said you can add, that is the notion of scale broke down during the pandemic. That is, there was a notion that big paintings are good paintings. So whatever you draw in a large scale, like 20 feet by 30 feet or 50 feet, that big size, somebody comes in front of it, that was considered great. All those things broke down to a few pixels. What do you call aspect ratio of 3:4 or something in the small screens. So the notion of huge paintings broke down into very small stamp-like thumbnail images, and that is a paradigm shift, I feel. And so a lot of artists are now doing miniature paintings, small scale paintings that can fit into the scene. So I think that is a big game changer. Thank you, sir.
Yes, there was a, I mean, even with chalk art, and there was so many new media came into being. In addition to what you are saying, as a supplement, I'm saying there was a brotherhood in the US, in certain other countries where chalk and charcoal were used very commonly. You can draw anything on the road, on the street. Street art became very, 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 very common. The people who thought that the street art and the street artists were not very, what you say, acceptable, completely had a different notion, because the street was a place where maximum level of communication can take place during the time of COVID-19. Graffiti. Maybe graffiti, as Sir said, Jairam Sir said, after 10 years, there will be new writings on graffiti art. And as you said, the reconfiguration of art during the pandemic.